Yo, what's going on? Mike from Mike Talk Sports. At UFC 288, in the main event, it's going to be Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo. This is a very up-in-the-air 50-50 fight, and the odds really reflect that via the Vegas odds. But let me tell you in this video why Aljamain Sterling will defeat Henry Cejudo. First and foremost, let's get the grappling picture and really the grappling debate with these two out of the way before we get into what these guys will look like on the feet against each other. Is this going to be the classic grappler versus grappler matchup in the sense of Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington? These guys grappling just completely cancels out each other, and it's going to be on the feet for all 5 rounds. No, I absolutely do not think this is going to be the case. Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo genuinely are one of the highest IQ fighters we've ever seen in the sport, especially Henry Cejudo. And Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo both know they've gotten to this point in their career, being a double champ in Henry Cejudo and being a champion in Aljamain Sterling. They both know their grappling has gotten them to this point. They have a supreme confidence in their grappling. They both think they are better grapplers than each other. So in my opinion, both Henry Cejudo and Aljamain Sterling will both implement their grappling into this fight. And I know it's absolutely insane to say the guy who was a 21-year-old gold medalist in the Olympic for wrestling, one of the most decorated wrestlers we've ever seen in the sport of MMA, will be at a slight grappling disadvantage, but I genuinely think Aljamain Sterling is a better mixed martial arts grappler than Henry Cejudo is. The elephant in the room with both of these guys in terms of grappling is their shots and their takedown percentage isn't incredibly high. They're more of a volume and output grappler in terms of their takedown attempts rather than a GSP-esque grappler in the sense of very efficient, high percentage takedown, low volume type of guys. So these guys will both consistently shoot on their opponents, which I don't expect to happen in this fight. I think they will be a bit more calculated with their shots. But Henry Cejudo is much more of that traditional Greco-Roman wrestler where he'll chain together takedowns. He'll go from the high crotch to the single leg, or he'll just have normal single legs or double leg takedowns. He does like trips from the clinch as well. Whereas Aljamain Sterling is more of that opportunistic grappler. He will kind of chain together takedowns similar to Henry Cejudo at the base, but he will try to take your back from a standing position, and he really uses those takedown attempts to create scrambling opportunities to get his opponents on the ground, to get side control, and then to parlay that side control into a back mount. Now, once the fight hits the ground, the issue with Henry Cejudo and why I do give the grappling advantage slightly to Aljamain Sterling is he's not that good on the ground. Once the fight hits the ground, his submissions are okay, but I really think there is legitimately a 0% chance that Henry Cejudo submits Aljamain Sterling. That is one outcome in this fight I genuinely will put my reputation on the line of saying there's no way Henry Cejudo submits Aljamain Sterling. His transitions on the ground simply are not good enough. And Henry Cejudo, once he gets the fight on the ground, he kind of just sits in full guard or he sits in half guard and kind of does work from there and kind of pins his opponent to the ground, which really is not indicative of the scoring criteria of MMA, which is a bit of a hole in Henry Cejudo's game. Whereas Aljamain Sterling, man, he is an insane monster in terms of transitions on the ground. He's not someone who's going to be content with sitting in full guard or sitting in half guard. The thing about Henry Cejudo too, he's not the best at ground and pound either, even though it's sufficient, it's solid. I don't see Henry Cejudo ground and pound finishing Aljamain Sterling unless he clips him on the feet and follows up with shots on the ground. So in my opinion, Henry Cejudo really isn't going to do too much on the ground to Aljamain Sterling. Whereas Aljamain Sterling, I very well could envision an entire round having Aljamain Sterling with a body lock, a body triangle on Henry Cejudo. In my opinion, Aljamain Sterling's body locks and body triangles and his ability to take the back and have his opponent stuck on the ground is absolutely incredible. So in my opinion, Aljamain Sterling does have a path to victory via submission. I think he can take Henry Cejudo's back for an entire round and keep him there with that body triangle. But the fact that Petr Yan was able to fight off the hooks, fight the wrist control, and survive on the ground while Aljamain Sterling had him on his back, and same with TJ Dillashaw, even though he was injured in that fight, which is why it ended in TKO instead of a submission victory. I do think Henry Cejudo is extremely confident, and he probably will not get submitted in this way in this fight. So now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this fight and of this video. It's going to be the stand-up war that is going to happen in this fight. Now, I do give the boxing and technical boxing ability and just overall advantage in terms of the boxing and hands realm to Henry Cejudo, which really makes me nervous about picking Aljamain Sterling. Henry Cejudo is a really, really good inside boxer. He's very technical. Again, I think if these guys met each other in a boxing ring, I would pick Henry Cejudo to win. The thing I noticed, though, about Henry Cejudo and why I think his boxing advantage will be somewhat negated is because of his ability and lack thereof to close the distance. He's very good at closing the distance, but the thing is, Aljamain Sterling is better at keeping distance than Henry Cejudo is at gaining distance of his opponent. Aljamain Sterling really does a phenomenal job at circling around the cage. He's always moving laterally, and he always gets to a point where he'll back up against the cage, and he really has his opponents at bay. And once his back is up against the cage, he does a really good job of keeping his lateral movement going and really finding intercepting strikes. With Henry Cejudo's opponent and his boxing ability and how it's displayed at a high level, to me, this is Henry Cejudo's opponent standing in front of him. I don't think Henry Cejudo has really faced a guy outside of Dominick Cruz who's really going to try to evade his movement a lot. And the thing is, Aljamain Sterling with his movement is much less telegraphed than it is from a guy like Dominick Cruz. So even though I still would give the slight boxing advantage to Henry Cejudo, in my opinion, Aljamain Sterling is a better kickboxer, and he really finds that range with his kicks. His kicks to the body are absolutely phenomenal. And hey, Henry Cejudo is really good kickboxing too, but in my opinion, the length really is going to be a factor on the feet. I think Aljamain Sterling really could keep Henry Cejudo at bay. I think Henry Cejudo will dictate the pace of this fight, and I think he will lead the dance on the feet. But in my opinion, again, Aljamain Sterling is good as a defensive striker with intercepting shots, those shots to the body, and he does have that reach advantage to keep Henry Cejudo somewhat at bay. In my opinion, if Aljamain Sterling keeps the boxing level at about even, I think he can win the stand-up game with the kicking battle. So it's just about even on the feet, and I will give the slight grappling advantage to Aljamain Sterling. Again, I know that sounds insane, but I do think Aljamain Sterling is a slightly better mixed martial artist grappler than Henry Cejudo is, just for the details that I detailed earlier in this video. And then getting into kind of the personal aspect of this fight, the outside factors of this fight, Henry Cejudo is a very old 135er. We don't see a lot of 135ers at his age really succeed. I think, in my opinion, Aljamain Sterling is also going to step into the octagon weighing slightly more than Henry Cejudo, which is a nice advantage for Aljamain Sterling in that aspect. Definitely think a big reason why Henry Cejudo came back is because he saw a good stylistic matchup for himself that he thinks he can win, which I completely understand why. Again, I do think Henry Cejudo is a better boxer than Aljamain Sterling, but in my opinion, all that time off is only going to be a negative, not a positive for Henry Cejudo. It's not like he was banged up and injured during his UFC run. He was pretty healthy. Then breaking down the preparation, Henry Cejudo, no one really prepares like Henry Cejudo. He's absolutely incredible in the film room, but Aljamain Sterling is pretty solid in that aspect too. So if Henry Cejudo is going to have this incredible game plan going into this fight, I'm not going to be surprised, but in my opinion, Aljamain Sterling should be smart enough to kind of negate this. All in all, this is going to be a very close fight. In my opinion, one of the deciding factors of this fight when I'm going back and forth thinking, oh, Henry Cejudo is going to win, then, oh, Aljamain Sterling is going to win, is finish ability and who has the higher chance of finishing the other opponent. I genuinely do not see a path of victory for Henry Cejudo unless it is a decision victory or unless somehow he clips Aljamain Sterling on the feet. Aljamain Sterling has a solid chin, but he has gotten dropped in the past against guys such as Petr Yan in the first round of their first fight. Whereas Aljamain Sterling, I genuinely can see Aljamain Sterling either submitting Henry Cejudo or having him stuck on the ground in a really bad position and then ground and pounding, TKOing Henry Cejudo. So I do like the finish ability more from Aljamain Sterling than I do Henry Cejudo, which in terms of the judging criteria, I think is going to be huge in this fight. My official prediction, I think Aljamain Sterling is going to win 3-2 on the judges' scorecards. Thanks for listening, guys. Let me know in the comment section below, who do you think will win this fight and why?